The practice knife clattered across the gym floor as the martial arts instructor found himself suddenly immobilized face down on the mat. The entire class stared in shocked silence. Just moments earlier, they'd been snickering at the quiet mom in jeans who reluctantly walked to the front for a demonstration. Now the instructor's confident smile had vanished. As he slowly rose to his feet, rubbing his wrist, a retired military officer in the back row stood at attention and saluted her. Who was this woman? And what secret had she been hiding from everyone, including her own son? Welcome to Hidden Heroes. Before we continue this emotional story, tell us in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. And if you think stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. We're growing every day, and I sincerely thank you for being a part of it. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in Bayside Middle School's gymnasium as parents filed in for the martial arts demonstration day. Bleachers squeaked under shifting weight while students in crisp white uniforms lined up on blue mats at the center of the room. Ren Hargrove sat alone on the highest bleacher, one leg crossed over the other, her posture straight despite her attempt to blend in. Her weathered olive jacket and simple jeans were unremarkable, her dark hair pulled back in a practical style that hadn't changed much since her son Griffin was born 12 years ago. Griffin stood at the end of the second row on the mat, tugging nervously at his white belt. His eyes kept darting toward his mother, then quickly away, as if her mere presence made him anxious. It wasn't embarrassment exactly, more like the complicated feelings that come when your worlds collide in unexpected ways. First time at one of these demonstrations? A woman with an eager smile slid onto the bench beside Ren, extending her hand. I'm Azra Kazdagi, Lena's mom. You're Griffin's mother, right? Ren nodded, offering a polite but brief handshake. Ren Hargrove. Master Thorne is amazing, Azra continued, undeterred by Ren's economy of words. Trained celebrities in Los Angeles before moving here. My daughter's been with him for 3 years. You picked a good program for Griffin. He chose it, Ren replied, eyes never leaving her son. I just write the checks. Azra leaned closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Griffin mentioned you were in the military. My brother was Army too, Finance Division. What was your MOS? I served. Ren's tone offered no invitation for follow-up questions. Administrative work, mostly. Azra seemed to understand she'd hit a wall and settled back to watch the demonstration, but her question had stirred something in Ren's carefully compartmentalized mind. Administrative work. If only it had been that simple. The instructor entered with theatrical flair, bowing deeply to appreciative applause from the parents. Master David Thorne was tall and lean with an exaggerated confident stride that commanded attention in his black uniform and belt. After a brief introduction about the importance of discipline and self-defense, he led the students through basic forms. Louder, Thorne called as the children performed katas with accompanying kiais. An attacker should fear your voice as much as your hands. Griffin's shouts were noticeably quieter than the others. His movements were precise, but lacked the aggressive energy Thorne seemed to favor. Each time he completed a sequence, his eyes would flick toward his mother, checking for her reaction. Ren's face remained impassive, but her eyes softened whenever they met Griffin's. 20 years of conditioning kicked in as Ren automatically scanned the room. Exits, potential weapons, sight lines, crowd dynamics. Old habits died hard, especially when they'd once meant the difference between life and death. She forced herself to relax, to remember that this was just a middle school gymnasium in suburban California, not a hostile environment where split-second assessments could save lives. Today, Thorne announced after the basic demonstrations concluded, we'll show parents what real self-defense looks like in practical scenarios. He scanned the audience with practiced charisma. But first, I'd like to know, do we have any parents with martial arts or military experience who might help demonstrate? Ren felt her shoulders tense. She'd been dreading this moment since Griffin first mentioned the demonstration. Before she could sink further into her seat, Azra's hand shot up enthusiastically. She was military. Azra pointed directly at Ren, her voice carrying across the gymnasium. Administrative, but still, she served. Griffin froze on the mat, his face draining of color. The last thing he wanted was his quiet, boring mom being put on display in front of his classmates. Master Thorne's smile widened as he zeroed in on Ren. Perfect! Would you mind helping with our demonstration? His tone suggested it wasn't really a question. It's always good to show the students what real-world situations might look like, and military training, even administrative, gives people good situational awareness. The gymnasium fell quiet, except for the hum of ventilation systems. All eyes turned to Ren, who felt the familiar weight of unwanted attention. She'd spent 12 years perfecting the art of being invisible, of living a life so ordinary that no one would ever suspect what lay beneath the surface. "I'd rather not," Ren said quietly but firmly, her voice carrying despite its low volume. Thorne's smile tightened slightly. "It's just a simple demonstration. Nothing too physical." He gestured toward the mat with theatrical encouragement. "We're showing these kids that size and strength don't matter with proper technique. Wouldn't you agree that's an important lesson?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some parents nodded encouragingly, others looked uncomfortable with the mild pressure being applied. Griffin stared at the floor, shoulders hunched with embarrassment. Ren looked at her son, noting his discomfort, weighing her options. She could refuse again, make a scene, draw even more attention, or she could get it over with quickly, go through the motions, and retreat back to anonymity. After a moment's hesitation, she stood and walked toward the mat, her movements economical and purposeful. As Ren stepped onto the mat, something subtle shifted in her demeanor. Her spine straightened imperceptibly. Her center of gravity lowered slightly. Her hands relaxed at her sides in a way that looked casual but was actually ready positioning. These changes were almost invisible to the casual observer, but they represented decades of training asserting itself despite her best efforts to suppress it. "Wonderful," Master Thorne beamed as Ren took her position on the mat. Parents reached for their phones, eager to record what promised to be an entertaining demonstration. Griffin, however, looked as if he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. "Now, even someone with basic military training," Thorne addressed the class while circling Ren like a predator sizing up prey, "would approach an attacker incorrectly without proper martial arts training." He demonstrated an exaggerated stance, arms positioned for maximum theatrical effect rather than practical defense. Ren stood motionless in the center of the mat, hands loose at her sides, expression neutral. Nothing about her suggested preparation or concern. To the casual observer, she looked like exactly what she claimed to be, a middle-aged mom who'd done some desk work in the military and was now uncomfortable being put on display. But certain details might have been noticed by a more trained eye. The way she positioned her feet, shoulder-width apart, weight distributed evenly, ready to move in any direction. Her breathing, controlled and measured, her eyes, which seemed unfocused, but were actually taking in everything, every movement, every position, every potential threat or advantage. "I'll attack slowly with this practice knife," Thorne explained, producing a blue rubber training blade from his pocket, "and you try your best to defend yourself." He looked at Ren with what he probably thought was a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, I'll be gentle." The condescension in his tone made something flicker behind Ren's eyes. For just a moment, the careful mask slipped and something harder looked out. Then it was gone, replaced by the same neutral expression. "Ready?" Thorne asked, adopting his stance. Ren gave a single nod. "Remember, folks," Thorne addressed the audience, his back partially turned to Ren, "I'm demonstrating how untrained individuals typically respond to attacks, and then I'll show the proper technique. This should be very educational for—" He never finished the sentence. Thorne lunged forward with the practice knife, moving faster than demonstration speed, clearly intending to catch Ren off guard and make her look foolish by overwhelming her with superior skill and aggression. What happened next occurred so quickly that many would later need to re-watch their videos to fully understand the sequence. Ren's right hand intercepted Thorne's wrist with surgical precision. There was no wasted movement, no telegraphing of her intention. Her grip found the exact pressure point between tendons as she subtly shifted her weight, redirecting his forward momentum rather than opposing it directly. The practice knife clattered across the floor as Thorne's arm was guided in an arc that used his own force against him. Before anyone could process what was happening, the instructor found himself face down on the mat, arm hyperextended behind him, completely immobilized by Ren's seemingly effortless control. Ren's expression remained unchanged, calm, almost bored. The entire sequence had taken less than 3 seconds. Complete silence fell over the gymnasium. Not a single child whispered, not a parent spoke. The only sound was the gentle hum of the ventilation system and Thorne's labored breathing as he tried to process what had just happened to him. After maintaining the hold for exactly 2 seconds, just long enough to demonstrate complete control, Ren released Thorne with professional courtesy and stepped back, straightening her jacket as if she'd done nothing more strenuous than checking her watch. From the back of the gym, an older man with military posture slowly stood, staring at Ren with dawning recognition. Colonel James Merrick, retired, had come to watch his granddaughter's demonstration, but now found himself transfixed by the woman on the mat. "Valor Team Alpha," he whispered to himself, the color draining from his face. "Basra, 2013. Thorne rose slowly from the mat, rubbing his wrist, his performance persona completely shattered as he stared at Ren with new understanding. The casual dismissal was gone, replaced by the respect one professional gives another after being thoroughly outclassed. "Mom?" Griffin's voice broke the silence, a mixture of confusion and awe. The retired officer approached the mat, stopping at a respectful distance from Ren. His bearing had completely changed from that of a grandfather watching a school event to something more formal, more military. "Lieutenant Commander Hargrove?" he asked quietly. "Basra, 2013? Ren gave an almost imperceptible nod, her eyes momentarily showing recognition before returning to their neutral expression. Without hesitation, Colonel Merrick stood at attention and offered a solemn, formal salute. "Sir," Ren responded quietly, returning the salute with perfect form. The gymnasium remained silent as parents and students tried to process what they were witnessing. The formal military exchange between the retired officer and Griffin's mother created a tension that was almost tangible. "At ease," Merrick said softly, before turning to the stunned instructor. "You just attempted to demonstrate combat techniques to one of the most decorated special operators in naval history." Murmurs rippled through the crowd like waves. Griffin stared at his mother as if seeing her for the first time, his 12-year-old world suddenly expanded beyond recognition. "Ma'am," Thorne approached Ren with genuine humility, all trace of condescension gone. "I apologize for my disrespect. I had no idea." "You weren't supposed to," Ren replied simply. Colonel Merrick addressed the silent room, his voice carrying the authority of decades in uniform. "Lieutenant Commander Hargrove led extraction missions that saved over 30 hostages across 3 continents. Her unit's operations remain classified, but I can tell you that she was one of the finest tacticians I ever had the privilege to serve alongside." The crowd stirred as phones appeared, parents suddenly realizing they might have witnessed something extraordinary. But Ren held up a hand, and something in her posture commanded immediate attention. "This doesn't leave this room," she said quietly, but her voice carried to every corner of the gymnasium. "My son has the right to a normal childhood, and I have the right to a quiet life. What happened here was an accident, a momentary lapse in judgment on my part." But Griffin stepped forward, his young voice clear in the silence. "No, Mom, it wasn't an accident." He looked around at his classmates, many of whom had teased him about his quiet, boring mother. It was awesome. For the first time since the demonstration began, Ren smiled, a real smile that transformed her face and gave everyone a glimpse of the woman behind the carefully maintained facade. "Would you consider showing the students a proper technique?" Thorne asked with genuine humility. "Something real, something they could actually use?" Ren looked at Griffin, who nodded enthusiastically. The pride in his eyes was unmistakable, no longer embarrassed by his ordinary mom, but amazed by the extraordinary woman she'd always been. "Just one," Ren agreed. What followed was a masterclass in practical self-defense. Ren demonstrated techniques that were simple enough for children to understand, but devastatingly effective when properly applied. Each movement was precisely controlled, every element explained in terms of physics and leverage rather than mystical martial arts philosophy. "Notice the economy of movement," she explained in a clear, confident voice that commanded attention in a way Thorne's theatrical style never could. "You don't need strength or speed if your technique is sound and your timing is right. The goal isn't to hurt your attacker, it's to create an opportunity to escape." The students hung on every word, recognizing the difference between performance and practical knowledge. Parents recorded everything, suddenly understanding that they were witnessing something far more valuable than a typical school demonstration. As the impromptu lesson concluded, Thorne bowed deeply to Ren with genuine respect. The students followed suit, and even the parents rose in spontaneous applause. But as the crowd began to disperse and normal conversation resumed, Colonel Merrick approached Ren once more. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why hide all this? You earned the right to be proud of your service." Ren glanced at Griffin, who was surrounded by classmates asking excited questions about his suddenly famous mother. "Because he earned the right to be just a kid," she replied, "not the son of Lieutenant Commander Hargrove, not a target for people who might want to settle old scores, not a symbol of anything other than himself." Merrick nodded slowly, understanding. "And now?" "Now I trust him to handle the truth," Ren said, watching Griffin demonstrate one of the techniques she'd just taught to an impressed audience of his peers. "He's stronger than I gave him credit for." As families began to leave the gymnasium, Griffin jogged over to his mother, his face glowing with excitement and pride. "Mom," he said, "can you teach me some of that stuff?" "The real stuff?" Ren put her arm around her son's shoulders, feeling a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying finally begin to lift. "Some of it," she agreed. "The parts that matter, the parts that keep you safe." As they walked toward the exit, Griffin looked up at his mother with new eyes. "Were you really a secret agent?" "Something like that," Ren replied. "But right now, I'm just your mom, and that's the most important job I've ever had." The gym slowly emptied, leaving only the echo of an extraordinary moment when the ordinary revealed itself to be anything but. Sometimes heroes wear designer uniforms and collect medals in public ceremonies, but sometimes they wear faded jeans and pack school lunches, their greatest victories measured not in missions accomplished, but in children raised with love and wisdom. Ren Hargrove had spent 12 years learning to be invisible, to be ordinary, to be safe. But in 3 seconds on a middle school mat, she'd rediscovered something she'd almost forgotten, that hiding who you are isn't the same as protecting what matters most. And sometimes, the best way to teach your children about strength is to show them what it looks like when it doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. This story was brought to you by Hidden Heroes. Before we leave you today, here's our question. Have you ever discovered that someone close to you had hidden depths or a secret past? How did it change your relationship with them? Tell us in the comments about the hidden heroes in your own life. And if you think stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. We'll see you in the next one.